establishments which are generally geared especially towards spectator sports. When you say excluding, what would be, if that's not permitted, what would be permitted? That's something perhaps the planner could give me an idea on.
If you could, so.
Yes. The idea or the concept is that this would be for something like a tennis club, or could be bowling, racquetball, but not those uses that were described.
Well, I mean, is that sort of looking at they would be taking the buildings down to put up something of that nature?
Well, it's conceivable. Remember, this zone incorporates land that goes beyond the Regional Medical Center or the Arden Development Corporation holdings. So it could be there, it could be part of something there, and it could be on the several pieces of vacant land that do exist in the zone. So it could be in any of several places.
Okay. What is the approach towards the heliport there? Is that going to remain?
Would they leave it there?
Oh yeah, I mean all of these uses that you have presented now, both conditional and under B and B1, etc. None of them seem to indicate that they're going to need a heliport there.
It seems to me the heliport was a function of a hospital.
Yeah, as an accessory to the...
That's exactly correct. It's no longer going to be a hospital.
Right. So, as a practical matter, I'd be surprised if there was still a heliport there after the hospital's gone.
Pardon?
As a practical matter, I'd be surprised if there were a heliport there after the hospital was gone. Because there can't be a hospital there, not by us. Right, by the deed restriction.
Right. But I mean...
Are you asking for the removal of the heliport?
Right.
It couldn't, I mean, based on the zoning, it couldn't be operated privately. It would need to be an accessory to a hospital.
Right.
So it wouldn't, turn into a commercial venture or anything like that.
There's no provision that that's a use that would be either permitted or a special permit use by itself.
Under what you have proposed here, would a lawn or somebody similar to a lawn be able to step in and be running a home for aged or disabled people or people in need of care, constant need of care?
I believe they could do that under the provisions of the code.
I mean, it's stated here that not maybe word for word, but indicated would fit in one of the categories that you have described.
I believe that it would.
Pardon?
Sir, I believe it would. Permit
I believe it would. I mean, that's a definite. It's not.
Well, I think we have. If you look at a new permitted use, it talks about medical spas, healing and rehabilitation centers operated by licensed medical professionals. That's on page 5.
Page 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the table also. There's item 8 under permitted by right.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's something that they would fit into one of the categories that you have described here in this local law. And
after the testimony of the hearing, you're raising an important question. The village board can consider whether if that's a use that's appropriate and it's accounted for in the uses that are listed. If it's not, they can consider changing the language.
Okay.
Anybody else want a public comment on local law 2?
I've got to throw something in.
Yep.
I think I know who you are. Sorry.
It's okay.
You don't have to go back to your seat. Stand in front of
You'll hear me better.
Okay.
I just wondered whether there any of you have undertaken to look at the deeds for the Arden Hill property that would have come from the Harrimans to Orange County Community College to Arden Hill Hospital, because I believe that there are some caveats that are attached to the deed to help us guard against something unforeseen happening to the property.
That was an issue that was raised several years ago. And let me say two things. I'm going to answer that question, but also know that as a municipality, we don't enforce or regulate private restrictions. We impose zoning on the use of property, but if there's a covenant or restriction between private parties, we don't enforce that. Now, nevertheless, we've heard this from a number of sources that there was some sort of covenant that said if this property is no longer used as a hospital, we revert back to the Harriman family or to their successors. I have seen the deed. I find no language like that at all in there.
I spoke to George Packenbarger before he died, just before he died, and he told me he was a confidant of the Harriman family and a member of your board.
And an attorney.
And an attorney.
Highly respected, well known.
Indeed. He said that Orange County Community College would have to sign off on whatever happened to Arden Hill in its next life. That's what he told me. So, I know you have written a long document and I have not read it. I would just encourage you to be vigilant in all aspects of it. Just be vigilant.
Sound advice.
Thank you. Any other further comments on local law 2?
I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but Rennie...
But you can't help yourself. You
Yeah.
We'll be disappointed, man.
Rennie raised a question that I think is rather interesting. And as you know, I was not a big fan of the moratorium, and I'm not a big fan of zoning which is restricting use and getting in the way of potential development. If a corporate, as we all know, Arden House is out of the conference center business, leaves something of a hole. If a university or a corporate entity wanted to come along and set up a conference center with overnight accommodations, a restaurant, and a helipad, where would we stand with the law as it now sits?
As it now sits?
If this is adopted.
This is adopted.
Are you requesting that be included in the zoning job?
No, I think he's asking.
No, what I'm trying to say here, I don't always express myself clearly. What I'm trying to get at is what you and I do not agree about, that we want to have less rather than more restriction. That the less we restrict this property, the more likely it is that we will have someone come in and find it economically feasible to develop. Rennie raised the question about helipads. You take that away, it's one more restriction. My feeling is deal with it at the time. If somebody comes in and says, we want to invest $20 million here, are we going to stand in the way over a helipad which already is an existing use there? 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, is that going to get in the way? My own feeling is the less we put in the law to restrict, the better. But it raises an interesting question.
Thank you. Any further public comment on local law 2? Okay, entertain a motion to close the hearing. Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to comment on this if possible. I know that a lot of people...
Sign up?
Yeah, you did.
Well, you couldn't.
Oh, we didn't vote on it yet.